Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 287 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing? I hope that daylight savings time was last week. I hope you have caught up on your sleep, because you're definitely going to need it this week with some 9 and 10 p.m. starts for the Canadiens as they head out west.
Yeah, unfortunately, that would be a no on my end, and I guess 10 p.m. starts might be the worst case scenario for me, but luckily we've got this podcast, and we have Rocket Sports, so I can at least stay up to date with everything. Not going to lie, completely forgot about daylight savings time and planned an early day last Sunday, so that's great.
Well, as you say, we're going to, for those that need it, and for those that don't, we're here to provide you with all the information that you may have missed. And in this show, we're even going to take a gander way down to September time, when the Canadiens will be putting together an opening night roster for 2024-2025.
So the title of this episode is Canadiens Forecast, Can Hughes Mold a Playoff Caliber Roster in 2024-25? On this episode, we have quite a bit to get through. We have some games to take you through from this past week, some roster updates, and then one Patrick Williams is going to join us in the Prospect Report. In the second segment, we'll take a way too early look at opening night roster in 2024-25. And of course, in the third segment, we'll turn it over to our listeners. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, will the Canadiens ice a playoff caliber roster in 2024-25? We want to hear from you. And Rick, what's the best way for all of our listeners to interact with us?
We've set up a text line for you. All you have to do is pick up your mobile phone, text us your comments, your questions, and the number is 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET.
And you can also follow us on social media. Just follow @Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, we have a website you can check out. It's CanadiensConnection.fm. Make sure that you check out our comprehensive pregame previews, postgame recaps for every Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. And here's what's happened since we've been gone. Going back to March the 9th, the Toronto Maple Leafs come to town and they beat the Montreal Canadiens 3-2. Not a great game for the Leafs, to be completely honest. Matheson opened the scoring, but Toronto in the second period did take control, potting 2 consecutive goals, as the Habs did end up coming up short. Nice to see Slavkovsky register 2 assists in this game.
Wasn't a good start for Sam Montembeault. He would have liked at least 2 of the goals back, maybe 3. And that left him winning just 1 of his past 7 starts. And at that stage of the week, had in those 7 starts, had a .344 goals against and an .896 save percentage. He's been on a bit of a losing streak and not playing well during those games.
A couple days off in between as the Columbus Blue Jackets come into Montreal on the 12th of March, and Montreal wins 3-0. The Habs scored 3 goals on 4 shots over the span of 6 minutes in the first period, and that was pretty much it. Congrats to Caden Primo getting the shutout, stopping all 41 shots. But of course, this Columbus Blue Jackets roster, not great on paper, if we're being honest.
No, they, for a number of reasons, the lineup was peppered with a lot of players from the Cleveland Monsters. And disappointing that the Canadiens won this game, but they played well for that 6-minute stretch where they got their 3 goals. Otherwise, Columbus, kind of dominated the affair. The Canadiens will give them full credit in terms of shot blocking. They blocked 32 shots to Columbus's 7 shots. So all of the Canadiens defensemen, the Canadiens forwards were helping out Caden Primo. And so were the penalty killers. The penalty killers raised their streak to 14 in a row straight kills without allowing a goal. So this was a great moment for Caden Primo. It was his second shutout of the season, and doing so, he became the 4th rookie goaltender in Habs history to record consecutive home shutouts. And the players on that list who did it before him: George Hainsworth, Jacques Plante, and Jerry McNeil.
Yeah, it's a pretty good company that he's in there, isn't it? But the Montreal Canadiens did get one day off in between games here as they continued to be at home, and they welcomed the Boston Bruins on the 14th. And this one would be an overtime win for the Bruins, 2-1. Not many shots on either net in this game. Both Danton Heinen and Nick Suzuki scored goals in the first, and that would carry the way all the way to overtime. And in overtime, one Mike Matheson with the big misplay in the O-zone led to a Boston odd man rush going the other way, and one Jake DeBrusk scored the game winner in that one. So kind of a snoozer throughout most of that game. I feel like Montreal was playing to survive here.
Yeah, we heard a lot of the chatter before the game from the players, from the coach, saying that they were out to take revenge. We remember it was back in the previous game against the Bruins, where the Bruins had a 9-4 win. And the Canadiens obviously were bound and determined not to let that happen again. Now it started out in a dominating way for the Bruins. The first 11 minutes of the game, they were out shooting the Canadiens 8-1. They had the puck in the offensive zone the entire time. They ended up getting a goal by Heinen for a 1-0 lead, and then the game kind of turned back the other way. The Canadiens gave a bit of a pushback. In the second period, it was clear that Marty St. Louis said, "We're not allowing anything. Forget about creating your own chances. We're not allowing them any chances." And the game just ground to a halt. And as you said, it was a snoozer. It was boring. And that carried on into the third period, where neither team, it was just a stalemate. The Canadiens weren't creating chances, and they were preventing the Bruins from doing the same. But as you said, just 25 seconds into the overtime period, and that was a really ill-advised play by Mike Matheson. He carried the puck deep behind the Bruins goal and then fell down and gave it up, creating that 2-1 for DeBrusk to score the game winner.
So the Canadiens' record is now 25-30-11. That's 61 points, 26 in the NHL. Make sure that you check out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, and feature articles and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal.
And you know what? We're going to take a look as we were giving out the percentages for playoffs, and we know what that percentage has been the last few weeks. So let's give you another percentage. And that's the percentage that the Canadiens, their chance of winning the NHL draft lottery. That percentage is now 6.5%, because we're projecting, the folks are projecting a 76-point season. Remember, their strength of schedule is the most difficult, and it still is for the remainder of the season. So about a 76-point schedule a 76-point season should put them in for 6.5% chance of winning the lottery.
Looking at roster news, a couple of minor transactions here. The Canadiens acquired forward Arnaud Durandeau from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Nathan Legare. Durandeau is a 6-foot winger. He's put up 14 points in a little over 20 games this season. Just a very minor transaction there.
Yeah, an AHL veteran, I guess you'd say. Looking to bolster the wing in Laval. And you had mentioned Patrick Williams. He's going to tell us a little bit more about both the Laval supporting trades that Ken Hughes made.
Colin White returned to the lineup against the Bruins. White missed 4 games with an upper body injury, so it's kind of nice to see him back.
Absolutely. He had missed the previous 4 games with an upper body injury. And unfortunately, as we said last week, that had happened in practice as he crashed into the net.
Kirby Dach skated with Christian Dvorak in Brassard on Friday. Dvorak, so far this season, is only suited up for 25 games, so it's nice to see these two hanging out and skating together.
Sure. And the team, as we know, were already off to Calgary, so they had the CN facility all to themselves on Friday.
And now let's get to our winners and losers of this week.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
So just the one winner and just the one loser for this week. I'll start off with the winner, and then Rick will take you through the loser. And the winner is the Minnesota Wild for pulling their goaltender in overtime and then proceeding to win the game. There was a rule that came to the surface after this happened that I don't think anyone knew about, even the players maybe, where if you pull your goaltender in overtime and lose, you don't get the loser points. So kudos to the Minnesota Wild for taking a big risk here, pulling that goalie in overtime, and it paid off. They ended up winning the game with the extra attacker. And this is like a pretty big story and kind of helped the Minnesota Wild in their standings as well. John
Hines felt that the 1 point wasn't going to be good enough. They needed the 2 points, made the bold decision. He knew the rule that had Nashville scored into that empty net, that he would have given up the 1 point. Many of his players did not know, and of course, a lot of people around the league didn't realize that rule was in place.
And Rick, you have the loser for this week. What do you have for us?
Well, the loser in my books is the person or persons who stole from the Pittsburgh Penguins 17,999 bobbleheads of Jaromir Jagr. They were going to have a giveaway. They had a Jaromir Jagr night. They had 18,000 done. They gave one to Jaromir. And so the rest of the shipment apparently was stolen, and they haven't been able to track where it is. Now they've kind of leaned into it, their PR department, and made some it's interesting videos and posts, and that's caused some people to say this whole thing was a hoax and that it was a PR stunt. I don't think so. I think it was that they definitely lost these, and let's hope that they can be recovered.
Yeah, making the most of a bad situation, but it does sound like those that attended the game at that night when they were supposed to give away the bobbleheads came away with a voucher, so eventually they'll have their Jaromir Jagr. Kind of disappointing that they weren't able to celebrate alongside him on Jaromir Jagr night.
For sure.
And now we'll get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week, we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect. This week, we will shine the spotlight on Mamonte Ugri goaltender Yevgeni Volokhin. On March the 11th, he actually posted a shutout and a 1-0 overtime win. That was his 5th shutout of the season, and he's been great so far over in Russia. Looking forward to seeing how this goaltender might translate to the North American game. I think 5 shutouts so far for the young goaltender is pretty impressive.
We remember that the Canadiens took 3 goaltenders during the 2023 draft, and Volokhin was taken in the 5th round, 144th overall, and the most unknown of the 3 goaltenders that were taken over in the MHL, which is the equivalent of a junior league in Russia, and has had an absolutely terrific season. And looks like he's a little too good for that league, and we'll probably see him up with in the VHL next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a look at the NCAA, Hockey East unveiled All-Star Rookie Team, and its All-Star Rookie Teams include Jacob Fowler and Lane Hudson. So 2 Montreal Canadiens prospects being included there and showing some recognition for them, as they both have had great seasons to this point.
So if we look at, for Hockey East, the all-rookie team, we see that Jacob Fowler is the best goaltender, the best rookie goaltender there. And then if you look at the Hockey East named first-team All-Stars, second-team All-Stars, and third-team All-Stars, let's just go through the first team list of All-Stars. In goal, Jacob Fowler from Boston College. On defense, Lane Hudson, Boston University. Ryan Ufko from Massachusetts. Macklin Celebrini, who else? At forward for Boston University. Cutter Gauthier, Boston College. And Will Smith, Boston College. That entire first team is all made up of Massachusetts players, and as you go through, there's not much difference in the second team All-Stars. You see players like a goaltender, Michael Rabel, Ryan Leonard is in there, Gabe Perreault. It's quite an honor, I think, for Jacob Fowler and Lane Hudson to get the honors that they did, especially being named to the first team.
Absolutely. And let's take a look at some prospects over in Europe. If we want to take a look at the SL playoffs, the GCK Lions beat Olten 5-4. The Lions win the semifinal series 4-3, and that means that David Reinbacher's season has come to an end. And it's not been a great season for him over there. His team has not been great whatsoever, and I think David Reinbacher has kind of suffered for it. So I think looking forward to getting David Reinbacher out of that situation.
For sure. Why is the SL playoffs important? It's not even a team involved or a league that David Reinbacher's in. He's in the NL. But it was those 2 teams, the Lions and Olten. Had Olten won, it would have set up a play-out, as they call it. And that play-out game would have been with Cloten. But now there's no play-out final for Cloten and Ajoie. Both of their seasons are over. That means that Reinbacher should be in Laval, I would say early in the week, and maybe, depending on how JF Wool feels he is able to fit in. We remember that Cloten hasn't played since the 5th of March, so it's about 10 days he's been off. But he could play next weekend, and I think Laval has a 3-3 next weekend, so could see him. If you look at the D pairings right now in Laval, on the right side, you have Mailloux on the top pairing, Justin Barron on the second pairing, and Gallipo on the third pairing. You might guess where Reinbacher would fit in there and who he might displace. So you're going to want to pay close attention to the coverage that we do about the Laval Rocket, especially this upcoming week.
For sure. And just one other European league to look at, the SHL playoffs. Rogel leads series against Timrå 1-0. So that's Adam Engström's team on the losing side. So far in one game, Engström's put up 1 assist.
And I should have checked. I think that's a 3-game series, but that means that, should it go the way for Timrå, that Engström's season could be done, and he could be heading to the Laval Rocket towards the end of the month or so. So that's going to be all our next player to watch when he's able to come over. And we mentioned Lane Hudson, obviously on Boston University, one of the top teams in the league. That's going to take a little longer for him to come over, and we'll likely see him in a Canadiens uniform towards the end of the Canadiens season.
And just one quick news item for the AHL before we welcome in one Patrick Williams. The Laval Rocket set a new season attendance record for Place Bell. Typically, they average between 4,000 and 6,000 fans. But what's the big announcement here, Rick?
Well, this comes, the season total is, I believe, 280,000, a little north of 280,000 for the season. And they still have 5 games to go, I believe, 5 home games to go to add to that record. So well done to the folks at Place Bell.
Exactly, and big congrats to them. And I'll just clarify here that it's 4,000 to 6,000 fans per game as opposed to the full season. So with that, I'm very pleased that Patrick Williams has entered the studio. Patrick Williams covers the AHL and is a regular contributor to the Canadiens Connection and Rocket Hockey Report. So Patrick Williams and Rick Stevens will have a little chat here and talk about the Laval Rocket possibly making a push to the playoffs. And welcome to Patrick.
Thanks, Michael. It's that time it's that time on the Canadiens Connection where it's been a few weeks, so it's time to have Patrick Williams, AHL writer extraordinaire, back in the studio to give us an update on all things Laval Rocket and the AHL. Patrick, nice to have you back.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
Everybody's happy to have Patrick.
Nice to hear the fan club.
Yes, you have a strong fan club. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? We love having you, and our audience loves hearing from you as well. If you aren't following Patrick Williams, head on over to Twitter or X, and you'll find him at Patrick Williams AHL. But right now you can hear him right here. And Patrick, the trade deadline happened, which means that we're not too far away from the playoffs. Just 5 or 6 weeks away. And surprise, surprise, the Laval Rocket are in it. They have an opportunity here. They're in a fight with a few teams, with the Marlies, with the Senators, even the Comets behind them. And the way the rest of March kind of plays out is going to go a long way to deciding this, I think. They got two games this month against the Toronto Marlies, 4 games against Belleville, 1 against Utica. Talk about that playoff race and how you get into the playoffs in the North Division of the AHL and how that affects the Laval Rocket.
Well, it's pretty simple for the North Division, at least. Top 5 make it. There's 7 teams in the division, so that cutoff line after 5. Right now, the Rocket are in the 6th spot, but only 1 back of Toronto. The catch is that Toronto has 3 games in hand. Toronto is also they've been up and down as well this season. And then you have really, the Rocket are in the 6th spot, but really only 4 points between them and number 3, Rochester. So if you can somehow get in, you're in a pretty good spot. So if they were to get into, let's say, that number 5 spot, or 4, they would play a best of three, essentially a first round / play-in round. That would be for the right to face the first place team in the following round in a best of five. Now, if you stick with me here, and then from there, it's pretty straightforward at that point. You play that best of five. You then play the winner of the other series in the division final. That's a best of five. From that point, you would go into best of seven conference final, and then the Calder Cup final is the best of seven as well. So that's sort of the long and the short of what the North Division is. It's one of the more straightforward setups in the AHL, as opposed to, like, for example, the Pacific Division, where you have 10 teams, top 7 make it, and everyone from number 2 down to number 7 has to do that best of 3 play-in round. So that gets a little hairy and difficult and tricky, especially if you're the number 2 spot. You look at a team like Coachella Valley last year; they had 103 points, second overall in the league, and they did go right into a best of 3 that came down to that third game, and they managed to pull it out against Tucson. And then they went all the way on to the Game 7 of the Calder Cup final. But you can see how quickly a very good season could go up in smoke if if you even stumble a little bit in that thing. So I think if you're the Rocket, sure, you want to get in, period. But if you could get into that number 3 spot, that gets you out of that best of 3 situation altogether, and I think that's much more to your advantage.
And as you say, that best of 3 is it's over pretty quick. But if you can get past that, if the Rocket could get up against, you said the number 1 team, that's either likely going to be the Cleveland Monsters or the Syracuse Crunch. Syracuse, of course, a long-standing rivalry. And a familiar head coach there. Cleveland has been at or near the top of the standings in the North all season long, but Laval beat them twice this past week in Laval. So that has to be exciting for Laval Rocket fans, that they're kind of right in this.
Yeah. Oh, they're very much in it. And which is, I mean, when you look at what the start of their season was, it's something of a minor miracle, I think, because it was, as we know, it was a rough start. Mid-December, they'd won 7 of their first 25 games, I believe it is, and that was that night in Hershey where they lost 7-1, and it was looking pretty grim. To put it nicely. And then they go on a tear where they won 6 of 7, and then they had another run of they went 5-0, 1-0, and from that point forward, I mean, they've slowed down fairly considerably since then. Since really about maybe the end of January, give or take, but that really did vault them back into contention. That run there for about a good solid 6 weeks. Now they won 3 in a row, like you said. 2 impressive wins last weekend against a really good, solid Cleveland team. They manhandled Bridgeport the other night. Which Bridgeport is at this point playing out the string. So that's a game you absolutely have to win. But that is also a team where you had an overtime loss back in February on the road. So they took care of business, winning the games you're supposed to win. Now you have another one against Bridgeport to start the weekend. You have Toronto to end the weekend, and then you go into that stretch where back-to-back in Belleville, in Toronto, and then Utica. So all teams that you're battling there for that 4th and 5th spot. So you absolutely you have a chance now. You down the stretch you play. They have 14 games left. 6 of them are against Belleville, right? So I mean that's the beauty of the American Hockey League in the sense that it's much different from the NHL where we're seeing teams at the NHL deadline, maybe they're 6 points back and they're selling off players. Yeah. Where you're 6 points back in the AHL, it's not necessarily a death knell, and it's a situation where you have so much head to head. matchups, you really can, especially if you can get a team where, this is a league, obviously, where you play a lot of 3-4s and 3-3s. If you get a certain team, where maybe they're a little bit shorthanded that weekend, you can knock off a few wins right there. So, it really, there's a lot of volatility in the AHL stands. And I always say this is a league of streaks. I mean, this is a team with, you look at Milwaukee, they won 19 in a row, and then I believe they dropped 4 of their last 6. So, I mean, things change quickly in this league. And, if you can get on a little bit of a roll, you definitely can, make up some ground there. I think the big one that they really have to worry about now is Toronto having those 3 games in hand. But, Toronto's had their own issues as well.
So to do his part, Kent Hughes has made a couple of minor moves to kind of solidify that lineup, adding a couple forwards. Jacob Perreault, we know Yannick Perreault, formerly with the Canadiens. He brought in Perreault from the San Diego Gulls, and Arnaud Durandeau, who's been with the Rocket will be his 3rd team this season. He's been with the Islanders and the Comets. Can you talk about those 2 additions to the Rocket team?
Yeah, so Perreault, Perreault's interesting because it feels like he's been around really forever. But, that's because he came in during the pandemic year. He came in as an 18-year-old. So that's an interesting thing right off the bat. But right now he's only 21 years old, yet he's already in his 4th pro season, which is it's really just one of those oddities that were created by the pandemic and everything that came with that. So he was with a bad San Diego team, a team that's really had, real tough go over the last couple of years, really. But he's a 1st-round pick. He's only 21. You're able to get him for a guy like Jan Mysak, who, obviously, had his own potential, but there wasn't quite a fit there in Laval / Montreal for him. So, it's an opportunity for a guy with, is some potential who's still young. If you can get him into your system and really work with him, and what he has to do, I think, is really put together a responsible 2-way game. And that's the case, I mean, my gosh, for so many players at this level. That's more often than not what holds him back. I mean, he's shown he has some scoring potential, but yeah, the defensive part of his game, that ability to bear down consistently, hasn't been quite there. But he's also only 21, so players change, and so I think it's a solid move that. It's worth taking a shot on. And as far as Durandeau, I mean, he's an interesting case. He's sort of the opposite. He's 25. He's a 6th-round pick, but he had 24 goals last year in Bridgeport. But this year's been a real tough go of it. He went 3 months without a goal. So you have a guy that's, coming off a 24-goal season, feeling good about himself, comes in, and it just hasn't worked for him. He started in Bridgeport, so that's a team, obviously, as Laval fans saw the other night, is struggling. They struggled all year, and then he was sent in a trade off to the Jersey Devils system with Utica, played there, had trouble really kind of finding his role there. So now, he's on his 3rd team, coming back home. He's 25. So this is kind of a, I don't want to say make or break, but you're getting down to that point for a player like that who, really has to sort of try to make something of the rest of this year. Obviously, this year has been a difficult one. He's on an expiring contract, so probably him maybe more than anyone else on that team needs this Laval club to get into the playoffs, and for him to be a part of that, and obviously then to make a real solid contribution to the playoffs so that he can go into the summer as a free agent, either stick with Laval or set himself up for a good opportunity elsewhere, because to get traded twice in 1 year as a 25-year-old is a tough spot. And I will say in his defense, though, I mean, Bridgeport's just a team that just hasn't had it this year. And then Utica, I mean, they're at the bottom of their division as well. and they've had a lot of ups and downs, in addition. So, he's not necessarily, he certainly hasn't been the solution for either club, but I think he has also been something of a product of the circumstances around him.
Now, I mentioned it was Kent Hughes that made these minor deals, bringing in the players, but ably assisted by the Canadiens' assistant general manager, John Sedgwick. And since you were last here, John Sedgwick has had his contract extended. And a small detail was that he was also named officially the general manager of the Laval Rocket. Talk to us about what his role is, or what a general manager's role is in the AHL, and how it's important that now he's that it's acknowledged that he is the GM and doing things for Laval.
Yeah, so he's he's always been kind of he's obviously has a law background, so he's been somebody that has kind of been on the side of the cap, the contracts, stuff. Sort of the very nitty gritty, complicated, not so glamorous side of the business, right? The stuff that maybe for a lot of fans, their eyes, and frankly for media, eyes glaze over, and stuff that is extremely important to have somebody who knows what they're doing to manage that. He's been involved obviously with Trois Rivières and getting that off the ground and that launch. So that was kind of a real big line on his resume to get that. And now this opportunity is as a GM in the AHL. Essentially, what they do is they're kind of the person on the ground, so to speak, that handles the day-to-day affairs of the AHL team, handles the call-ups, to and from the ECHL, swings some of these, less heralded deals, for example, or at least is closely involved. Really, sort of is more of a day-to-day manager, because as we see with the NHL, being an NHL general manager, you have more than enough on your plate with just the NHL roster, and so it's a role that over the last decade plus, 15 years, I'd say, is really most NHL clubs have added that into their operation, where it's too much for one NHL GM to handle both the NHL club and the AHL club. You're talking 32 teams at each level. You have to really be on top of everything that's happening at one level or the other, and so it just allows for a little bit more specialization for a guy like Sedgwick, to handle things with Laval and really just handle things around the AHL as well.
Well, and you mentioned Trois Rivières. It's not only it's a lot to manage. There's not only the call-ups to the NHL, but back and forth between the ECHL, and that person has to be in touch with the pro scouting staff and be able to manage all of that movement, which is a lot more in the AHL than it certainly is in the NHL.
Absolutely.
So speaking of recalls, we noticed that the Canadiens recalled on trade deadline day. They recalled Jayden Struble and Joshua Waugh, and they first had to send them down. They sent those two players down to Laval and then recalled them right away. And we know that made them eligible should the Rocket get to the playoffs, that Struble and Waugh would be able to join the roster and may join them down the stretch to help make those playoffs. But then we start thinking about players like a David Reinbacher or an Adam Engstrom, who will likely join the team when their season is fully over. And we've been asked before, how does that happen? If Struble and Waugh had to be on the roster to be eligible for the playoffs, how can players come from Europe and then receive the same kind of eligibility. Can you work through those kind of details just to calm fears that a player like Reinbacher is going to play an important role once he comes over?
Yeah. So, a lot of ways it's similar to, let's say, like college and junior players, right? Like, the last several weeks, we'll see a flood of college players signing deals, either, PTO or ATOs, where they'll be able to go immediately to the AHL club and play. So, if you sort of think it in those terms, you can get a player onto the roster that way. And, it's a great opportunity that you're able to have that player, get their feet wet. Let's say, let's say you expect to have that player in Laval or in Montreal next year. You're able to, kind of just get give them something to work with as they go into the summer. So I'll give you an example. Let's say Emile Andre, he's in the Philadelphia system, 2nd round pick, spent last year in the Swedish Hockey League. So, a player that once this season was over there, he went to Lehigh Valley, played 10 games there down the stretch, played another 3 in the playoffs. That gives him 13 games of, high level experience. You're playing those high pressure games down the stretch to even get into the playoffs. And then obviously then you're in the playoffs, and that's a whole other level of pressure. And it just sets the player up well, that, let's say it's late April, early May, they go and they're able to have something to work with. They now have a sense of, okay, here's what regular season playoff hockey in North America is like. Here's what I might expect next year from the AHL. It's a chance to get familiarized both for the player and for the staff, the coaching staff at the AHL level. So it works well really for all sides. And, and the other thing too is, like European teams, a lot of times their season ends like, let's say mid-March. Do you want to send your player home that early? Or do you want to get them over here and keep them playing? So the longer you can extend a player's season and really get them that high level experience, the better. So my advice to Habs fans would relax. This is not a unique situation whatsoever. And, it's something that's, there's a well-established pathway. So just, whatever will be. A lot more depends really on, how long that player's season goes in Europe than anything after that.
Well, and to add another wrinkle, you mentioned college and junior players, but in this case, Lane Hudson, and you said PTOs, ATOs are available. It's expected that Lane Hudson is going to have perhaps a long season as Boston University has been a really good team, one of the best teams in the NCAA, and may be on track for a long, even a Frozen Four appearance. But once that is done, he's expected to sign his ELC, join the Montreal Canadiens. But there is a possibility that he could sign a PTO and play for. It's not likely, but that's another wrinkle to watch for, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. So the Frozen Four goes April 11th and 13th, so about a month from now. And then, we've seen players literally they play that championship game on that Saturday night, and Sunday morning they're signing a PTO or an ATO to go off to the AHL club. And the business moves quickly. So, like you said, Boston University, certainly a team that has a lot of potential, to be playing for quite a bit longer. Yeah. But, on the other hand, the nature of the college postseason is that, it can all, you don't have those best of 7 series. So it can go up in smoke pretty quickly. And, a lot of cases you see a player, maybe you thought he'd be not available till, let's say, mid-April, and then maybe 3 weeks early, here he is.
That's true.
On your doorstep. So it changes quickly. But yeah, if you can get that player in, those players could be a huge boost. same thing with junior. I mean, I always use the example of Philadelphia in 2005, where they brought in Mike Richards and Jeff Carter, or 1-2 combo. Late in the year and then into the playoffs, and those two were an absolute force. Went on their way to winning the Calder Cup that year, and obviously both of them went on to long, very successful NHL careers as well. So, that's the thing with the AHL. Like, I mean, the standings are so volatile just because, I mean, in what other league can you're maybe 80 to 90% of the way through the regular season, and then you drop an impact player into the lineup, right there that can really come in and maybe be a number one center or a number one defenseman. Carey Price, another great example, obviously, with Hamilton back in 2007, came in late in the year and put the team on his back and went to the Calder Cup and won it. So, and obviously went on to a fantastic career. So, this league is, it's a very much a day by day type league where you can't ever really write a team off, really ever.
Well, bottom line is it's an exciting time to be a fan of the Laval Rocket. We're happy that you're here every few weeks or so to explain it all to us. In between time, find Patrick. He writes about the AHL for NHL.com, for AHL.com, and a valued guest for us here, valued contributor. So thanks again, Patrick. Do follow Patrick at Patrick Williams AHL on Twitter. And we always appreciate you being here. What a great chat with you this week.
Well, thank you. Always a pleasure to be on.
So thanks so much to Patrick there, and thank you, Rick, for leading the way through that conversation. That was great, and always wonderful to hear from such an AHL expert.
He follows the AHL for NHL.com, for the AHL.com, and for Rocket Sports. And as you know, we've had him on all season on the Canadiens Connection once a month. You can also find him on the Rocket Hockey Report with Amy once a month on YouTube. He's provided some great coverage, and he's going to be invaluable as the Rocket make this a serious push for the playoffs.
For sure. So if you're looking for all the best content on Canadiens prospects, head over to thn.com/Montreal. And if you're looking to find the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, we also do thn.com/QMJHL as we cover the QMJHL for the hockey news. And we'll move along to our quotes of the week. And a lot of these are based around Jake Allen and his departure. Kent Hughes finally resolved the dreaded 3-goalie tandem at the trade deadline, trading Jake Allen to the New Jersey Devils. So how did Allen's fellow goalies react? Well, Sam Montembeault actually had some nice things to say about Jake Allen. He says, Jake Allen was always supporting me, and he was one of the best teammates I ever had. So great quote there coming from one Sam Montembeault paying respect to Jake Allen.
Yeah, apparently the two of them had a pretty long back and forth text exchange after Jake Allen left. Montembeault was very sincere and expressed his gratitude for how much Allen had offered him advice and had publicly supported him in the media, and that for him to say that Allen was the best teammate he's ever had was really nice. I think that just while we're here on Jake Allen, I want to give a congratulations to Jake, who won his first start as a New Jersey Devil. He made 35 saves in his debut, and listen, he wasn't going up against an easy opponent. It was Dallas, who are near the top of the Western Conference. A little bit of a tough start. He allowed 2 goals in the first 3 shots, and you saw the comments rain down on social media from mostly Canadiens media and supporters saying, thank God the Canadiens got rid of him, and being really quite rude and disrespectful. And for whatever reason, I guess they didn't pay attention to the end of the game because I didn't see them congratulating Jake for his first win in a Devils uniform and being playing so well after those first couple of shots in his 35 save debut.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a number of quotes coming from one, Caden Primo, of course, with the departure of Jake Allen. That gives a big opportunity to Caden Primo. And let's hear what Caden has to say about what Jake Allen meant to him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff I'm going to keep personal. But one of the main things was just, he's had a long career and just seeing how he handles himself on and off the ice. How he is as a person to his teammates. He's one of the good ones, and it's tough to see him go, but his time here went well, and wish him the best. Just excited for the opportunity, like I said.
I feel bad for Caden Primo. I really, really do. He is so awkward in interviews. He is so nervous. He's obviously not comfortable in his own skin. He said what Jake Allen meant to him, he would keep personal. I think he meant private. And then went on to give a very generic type answer and said, I guess it went well for him here. And I'm sure that he appreciates what Jake did for him. More than that, I don't know why he feels he can't say that. Whether that's, I don't know why. And it's so odd because, Jake Allen Caden Primo is from a hockey family, from an NHL family. His dad, Keith, his uncle, Wayne. He should be able to, their advice, their coaching. We know that Caden went out and hired himself a mental coach. And I don't know if just keeping everything in is part of that training or what, but you can tell that it's painful for him to appear in front of the media.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it would have been nice to hear a little bit more from Caden Primo. It would have been nice to hear him be a little bit more complimentary of Jake Allen. But like you said, it does seem like he's a little bit awkward when he's in front of the media. A couple more quotes coming from Caden Primo, and he's talking about what will change now that there are only two goaltenders in Montreal.
Nothing changes. It's just, get better every day and, just be ready for when the name's called.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. This was after the Toronto game. This is Saturday night. We've talked in depth. If you talk to any goalie, not just Canadiens goalies, if you talk to any goalie, if you talk to any professional goaltending coach, and we have many times, they tell you that the three goalie system is unworkable. And when that load is lightened, it makes a huge difference. And there are enormous changes in being able to predict when you're going to start, that it becomes more regular. The fact that in practice you have your own net to go to every practice. Caden, I feel badly for you when you're spitting out cliches. They're, wait for my name to be called and nothing changes. Of course, everything changes. And that, it's so obvious. He sounds not very smart in these press conferences. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just that he's so uncomfortable and so nervous that he spits out these cliches about, waiting for your name to call and putting your head down and doing the work and all that. It's really, really unfortunate.
And if you thought that was a pretty short quote there that didn't offer up a ton of information, well, let's hear this next one. As Caden was asked, is it easier for you with only two goalies?
Nothing changes for me. I'm just trying to go into every game the same way, trying to be consistent, but definitely excited for the opportunity.
Now, several days had passed because that quote comes after the Columbus game where he had just got his second shutout of the year. And you would have hoped that the Canadiens PR staff had jumped in and said, you know what, it's okay. You can say that it's a change. It's a relief. The organization has shown confidence in you. And, again, the reporters tried to help him through that by asking subsequent questions about, no, we mean that. Isn't it easier for you in practice? Isn't it easier for you and he just repeated those same talking points. No change for me. And again, this isn't to embarrass him. This is to give some insight into a young man who is struggling, who has struggled this season to adapt to the role of being an NHL goaltender, both on and off the ice.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say, and it's just amazing. I thought when you played that second quote, maybe I accidentally just played the same one over again, but no, it was a little bit different towards the end. And yeah, it's too bad. I certainly would like to hear a little bit more insight from Caden Primo, but it seems like he wants to keep a lot of that information to himself, and just business as always, I guess. Yeah,
and he said at one point, he said that he is a nervous person and a lot of things he keeps inside, and that he's a tough nut to crack, or he has a shell that needs to be cracked, or something to that effect. And again, you worry about, you don't want goalies that bottle things up. You don't want a goaltender who bottles stuff up inside and mulls over a bad goal or even a great save. That can weigh on that doesn't show mental strength.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, we do have some news topics to get to before we get into our first break here. To start, Hockey Canada announced that Doug Armstrong will serve as general manager of Team Canada at the 2026 Winter Olympics. Currently, Doug Armstrong is the president of hockey operations and general manager of the St. Louis Blues. He'll be joined along with Ryan Getzlaf and Scott Salmont. This is an interesting choice. I'm not a huge fan of the Blues roster, but I think he'll have a lot more selection when it comes to picking out a Team Canada.
I kind of like the addition of Ryan Getzlaf as well. And it's said that Armstrong is going to be general manager for Team Canada for the Winter Olympics, but also that Four Nations tournament that we talked about earlier, and the World Championships as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting news coming from Atlanta as investors represented by Anson Carter request to begin expansion process to bring an NHL team back to Atlanta. So this has not worked on two occasions. Both of those occasions ended up moving to Canada. I understand that Atlanta is a very big market. There's lots of opportunity there. Perhaps there were some issues in terms of ownership the last few tries, so I'd be interested to see. And Anson Carter being involved, it's a former hockey player, so I think a lot of experience coming in there.
Anson Carter being, as you said, a former NHLer, as well as a current commentator on TNT. TNT has done some very interesting coverage with the NHL and is kind of taking things in a new direction and garnering a large audience. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's any sort of association there. I think this is going to happen, whether it happens in terms of expansion or otherwise. I've followed the Atlanta Thrashers Twitter account, which has been active for years and is kind of very humorous. But, there seems to be a real push. We had the Salt Lake City application bringing a team to Utah in February that got some momentum, and now Atlanta. So if this is done via expansion, whether this is done by moving a team from Arizona I think this we're going to be hearing more about this sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if I'm personally a huge fan of adding more teams, but the last 2 times the NHL has done it, it's been pretty exciting, and I think it's helped grow the game to an extent. So we'll see how it goes. Like you said, maybe be nice to find the Coyotes a stable home, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
And a new stable.
Yeah. The NHL annual GM meetings will be taking place in Palm Beach, Florida next week. One of the items on the agenda is discussing 3-on-3 overtime, possibly discussing some rules involving puck possession and regrouping. If that's the case, I don't mind that. One of the things I dislike the most is when it's 3-on-3 overtime, a team goes on a rush, they decide they don't like what they see, so they skate all the way back to their own zone. And they tried that for the entire 5 minutes, and it makes it incredibly boring. So what are your thoughts on this, Rick?
I disagree completely. And that's good.
Really?
That's a good thing. I think that possession is king, obviously, in overtime, and that regrouping, allowing another wave to come down the ice, set up different matchups, even make an exchange of players. I think that shows a certain skill, being able to hold on to the puck. And I think that the rules, as far as, I don't know what you're going to do, call a face-off or a face-off. It's just going to be kind of disruptive and going to be more stop and go in overtime. The only change I'd like to see is add 2 minutes, make it a 7-minute overtime, and that would reduce, I think, greatly the possibility of getting to a shootout, because you'd have to introduce. Not just necessarily your top 2 lines. You'd have to introduce additional players, and that's going to be an advantage for one team or another.
Yeah, that's fair. I personally do like the shootout. So anyways, I know it's not cool to like it anymore, but
yeah, this is great. Having 2 valid, diverse opinions. That's what we appreciate here at Rocket Sports.
Absolutely. And we'll take a break and argue about this while we hear from our sponsors, DraftKings. And then we'll have our big topic segment, a way too early look at the opening night roster of 2024-25. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can give him a follow on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow us at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And just a reminder here to make sure that you hit that subscribe button for the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. And this episode is entitled, Can Hughes Mold a Playoff Caliber Roster for 2024-25? The title of this segment is a way too early look at the opening night roster in 2024-25. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I know it's a little bit early, but there are only 16 games left in this Montreal Canadiens season. So there's a few items to do in the regular season checklist, a few things to look out for in these final 16 games, and then we can take a way too early look at that projected roster.
What else is to do? What else have Canadiens fans to look forward to? There is going to be no playoffs. There's going to be I shouldn't say that. There's going to be a playoff push in Laval, and that's going to be exciting to follow. There isn't going to be playoffs for the Canadiens, but there are going to be things to kind of set up the fall, and so why not jump ahead and take a look at what it might look like with what we know at this point in the middle of March.
Yeah, so let's start off by looking at what there is to look forward to in these remaining games, and that is individual milestones and personal best marks. I'll start off with a couple of things I noticed in terms of individual player accomplishments, and I think, of course, the first one comes from Nick Suzuki, who is 4 points away from beating his career-high 66 points in a season, and he's got plenty of time to get there. So Nick Suzuki, of course, having one of his best seasons, and looking forward to seeing how high he can go. If he can get to a point per game, that would be great, but I think he's just a little bit short at this point. The other thing would be Cole Caulfield, who is currently on a career-high points-wise, and he'll likely beat that, as well as his career high 67 games played in one season, which he's just a few games away from beating. I believe one game short right now, so he'll likely beat both of those, but he might come up a little bit short in terms of goals.
Yeah, Nick Suzuki, I think you mentioned points. There's also goals. He's at 26 right now. He is likely to set a personal best in goals, very likely. Cole Caulfield, nowhere near what the pundits had predicted at the beginning of the season, particularly in terms of goals. But as you said, in terms of points, should be a personal best. Mike Matheson is going to set a personal best in points. I saw some, projecting he might get to 60. I don't think that's within reach at this point. He's at, 47 right now. So he'd have to go on a heck of a run to get to 60. He's also may set a Canadiens record in terms of plus minus. He's at, on the negative side, a minus 27 right now. Yuri Slafkovsky, he's going to set a personal best with respect to points, 35 points, a decent season, and double digits in terms of goals.
Yeah, not bad. Of course, Slafkovsky with only one other season under his belt, and that was shortened due to injury. But nonetheless, I think Slafkovsky has done, I guess, decently better than what I was predicting at the beginning of the season. So good for him, and he still has a little ways to go, but it's been nice to see that progression at least. And
I'm just going to mention that if you remember back early, I think it was early October, we had a round table. Amy Johnson joined us as well, and we made 10 bold predictions for this season. And we're going to come back to that once the season is done. We're going to evaluate just how close we were. And some of these, we made predictions on some of these things: Cole Caulfield goals, Nick Suzuki points, Arbor Xhekaj penalty, all of those things. So you're going to want to stay tuned to see how well or how poorly we did in our predictions.
Yeah, I might not be coming off so well based on how the season's gone. We'll have to revisit that for sure.
But you have to show up for that episode regardless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another thing to look forward to is we come into the spring is help the Laval Rocket with the playoff push. So the Habs can maybe shift their focus on giving the Laval Rocket a little bit of a boost. That could be sending a player down or adding to that group, as we've seen that they've done this past week. Right now, the Laval Rocket are 5th place in the North Division, so they moved up a bit past the Toronto Marlies after their latest game. It'd be nice to see this team at least get into a qualifying round. I don't know how much more they can necessarily add, but of course, at the end of the season, certain guys like Jaden Struble will be joining the Laval Rocket for sure.
Yeah, we explained that last week that both Jaden Struble and Joshua Waugh were on trade deadline day sent down to Laval and recalled. They didn't actually go anyplace. It was just a paper transaction to make them eligible for the playoffs. But also, I would have thought for a playoff push, I'm a little surprised that Joshua Waugh went out with the Canadiens on their Western road trip. It would have been a big help, especially Jared Davidson's injured, Simoneau's injured. It would have been nice to have his help. And Jaden Struble has shown a really good season as a rookie, but he could help on the left side on defense as well. But they are both eligible, so they'll be going down at some point. And then, as we talked about earlier and with Patrick, that Reinbacher will be eligible for the playoffs to help Laval.
And another thing that we can look forward to in these final games is, players locking down jobs for next season. These players still have something to play for. In my mind, Caden Primo comes to mind. This is a big opportunity for him now that he's effectively, the backup, maybe even a goalie controversy in that crease after Caden Primo got a shutout against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he's going to have plenty of opportunity to prove himself and solidify himself for that backup job next season. Another player that comes to mind is one Yoel Armia. A bit of a weird situation with him at the start of the season as he joined Laval on a couple of occasions since coming back up with Montreal. He's looked a little bit better, but of course he's got a lot to play for. I think he's going to want to solidify himself as an NHL player heading into September. You mentioned the potential of Reinbacher joining Laval. He's going to have something to play for there. Lane Hudson joining the Montreal Canadiens at some point. He's going to want to make sure that he has a spot in the lineup. And some players that are on expiring contracts. Tanner Pearson, probably not going to join the Canadiens next fall. He'll be leaving as a free agent, but he's playing for his next contract. He's definitely going to want to find an NHL contract for next season. And I believe the same situation for Colin White, but that might be more of a two-way contract that he's looking for.
Yeah, Joshua Waugh we talked about. I think he's earned a spot. Where that is might be in question, but he's earned a spot in the lineup already. Nothing more to prove, I don't think. So it would be a help for him to go to Laval. You mentioned Yoel Armia. In my opinion, he was the best Canadian this past week. He may have been one of the top 3 or 4 players this past month. I think he's been terrific and a big surprise. Josh Anderson, where are you? Show us you're alive for the last 16 games. Alex Newhook, he had the injury, so he's got something to prove as the season ends out. There are things to make the management and the coaching staff say, okay, that now makes sense for next season.
Yeah, and I think we should say, too, probably the entire Laval Rocket roster has something to play for heading into next season, they're all certainly going to want to lock down jobs and hold down positions somewhere within that Montreal roster for sure.
Justin Barron, Emil Heineman, Farrell, Sean Farrell. It's definitely their chance, and if they can carry the team on a playoff run, that would be a big help as well.
For sure. And I'll throw out Casimir Kaskisuo as well. I think that's Laval Rocket goaltender that he's going to be playing for his next job, probably an AHL contract next September. So far, he's looked pretty good since coming to Laval too, so he'll want to continue that along. Interesting
that we haven't seen Kaskisuo much. There was a period of injury. We haven't seen him much in the last couple of weeks, and it's been Jakub Dobas all the time, and Jakub Dobas has been absolutely terrific in helping to carry this team towards a playoff spot.
Absolutely. So with that, I think we're probably ready to look ahead to next fall, right?
All right, let's do that.
Yeah, a little bit early, but let's do it. So let's take a look at the Canadiens' potential opening night roster for 2024-25. I think Montreal's top 5 probably is locked down here with Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Newhook, and Dach. I think that's pretty stable. But the rest of it, I think there could be some moving parts. Of course, based on your list, you also included one Joshua Waugh on that second line. Do you feel like that's a shoo-in at that point?
I don't. And a matter of fact, I don't. We've seen a lot of Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky on the top line, and I don't even know that's what's likely to happen on the opening night roster, but I don't think that can be engraved in stone either. We saw how good Slavkovsky and Kirby Dach were at the beginning of the season, and I don't know that Slavkovsky he had a poor start to the season. He came alive. He had a bit of a lull in terms of points and coming back. What I'd really like to see is that person that Nick Bobrov talked about, the guy who, and in Bobrov's words, carries the mail. Remember, he said that he hammered that over and over and over again. And even in his good stretches, we haven't seen Juraj Slavkovsky drive the play. And maybe he can do that on a second line away from the really tough competition in next season. But there's that problem. The Canadiens really don't have anyone. There's been all kinds of auditions on that top line that mesh well with Suzuki and Caulfield other than Slavkovsky. Although if they were able to do the acquisition at the draft, the Newhook Dach kind of acquisition, that might change, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So that leaves that second line wing spot open, and Joshua Waugh is kind of there by default. I don't know that he's looked very good. He's looked like an NHLer. Would I rather see him on the third line? I sure would. I think that's where he can be most effective. Use his defensive skills, add a bit of supplemental scoring on a third line. So I think because the Canadiens are missing a top 6 player, an elite scoring kind of player, I think let's use Marty St. Louis' term that a couple of these guys are in the wrong chairs. But that's what we have to work with right now. That's what we know. And so that's why I've slotted Slavkovsky first line, Joshua Waugh second line.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And do you remember that very brief period of time at the beginning of the season when Slavkovsky and Dach were together?
Yes.
And that seemed to work out very well before Dach was injured. So, yeah, I'd certainly like to see that again if we had an opportunity, even if it was moving Slavkovsky to that second line. And
Newhook, for we're talking about brief times, looked pretty good on the top line. Now, again, I see him with Newhook with Dach to help him with Dach with faceoffs and whatnot. But remember, Newhook can also be thought of as a possibility for the top line because of his his speed and how he matches up with those players.
For sure. So with that, now let's take a look at that bottom six. Right now, it looks like Armia, Dvorak, Anderson, Harvey Pinard, Evans, Gallagher, and the extras, most likely Owen Beck and Michael Pezzetta. So here I think it's kind of a mix of veteran guys, maybe not Harvey Pinard, but it doesn't really seem to fit much together. I wouldn't mind seeing Kent Hughes move on from some of these guys if he can. But like I keep saying this, but this is just kind of a mishmash of pieces that I don't think are in the right chair, as you might say.
Spare parts. They're all spare parts that are leftovers that Hughes has to deal with. And because he hasn't been able to move these players, he has them in his lineup. I listened to a quote from last year's trade deadline, and he talked about getting an enormous number of calls for the services of Josh Anderson, but just didn't feel he could part with them. I thought that was difficult to be reminded of. Armia, I think he belongs on that third line. Of anyone, Armia belongs on that third line, and maybe even Jake Evans, who has been stellar in terms of penalty killing, leads the league in terms of penalty killing minutes. But is it time to move on from a Jake Evans? Is it time to give some of those spots to the talent that's coming up? I've listed Owen Beck as one of the extras, but could Owen Beck do a job on the third or fourth line instead of a Dvorak or an Evans? Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's really some work here for Kent Hughes to do over the summer to get this lineup in shape and to remove some of the obstacles for the young forwards who are coming up.
For sure. Taking a look at defense, I think that Montreal just has a lot of guys on defense that could fill out that roster. What we have projected right now: Matheson, Savard, Goulet, Harris, Xhekaj, Mailloux, and the extra being Jonathan Kovacevic. There's a bit of a logjam here. It's nice to have a new face in there, potentially Mailloux making that transition out of camp. I think a number of guys could end up fitting within there as well. And some of this is dependent on whether or not Kent Hughes elects to move on from one of the veteran guys. And of course, Jordan Harris, I think his name has been thrown out there for potential trades too. So I think the defense is the most interesting thing to keep an eye on as we head into next season.
Yeah, this is really difficult. You've got Justin Barron on the right side. You've got David Reinbacher on the right side. You've got Logan Mailloux on the right side. Logan Mailloux has had, of course, he was an AHL All-Star and has been the top defenseman for the Laval Rocket this season, and has probably earned an opportunity. And we'll see what he does in camp. But for those who followed Laval, saw that pairing of Arber Xhekaj and Logan Mailloux, and they were both productive. Logan Mailloux being an offensive defenseman, but he's also physical, and they were punishing group and would be hard to play against, I think. The real difficulty here is Matheson and Savard. Both make this lineup difficult. They're needed because of their experience and the lack of experience, particularly on the right side for the Canadiens, but they also jam up the works. I think it's really been a disservice to Caden Goulet, playing him on the right side for a good part of this season, wanting to get him on the first pairing, but not having a bright shot defenseman to pair with him that they feel comfortable with on the first pairing. So that means the Matheson Goulet pair, as you know, Caden Goulet has more offensive potential than he's been able to show because he has to cover up for Matheson all the time, and they they want to give Mike Matheson an enormous number of minutes, 25 and a half minutes averaging per game. Tons of power play time, tons of penalty killing time, which seems a little bizarre. So next year, I'd really like to see Guhle removed from Matheson, Guhle placed on the left side, with a Harris and maybe with at some point with a Barron or a Reinbacher would be a much more comfortable pairing in and a progressive pairing to move on. We talked about David Savard. It was difficult only having the one retention slot and not being able to move him at the deadline. Even David Savard is saying, I'm appreciative to be here. Who knows what's going to happen in the summer? He's talking about the possibility of being moved in the summer. Kent Hughes has talked about it. Will he be moved, or will it be a Harris that's moved? We'll see. Matheson, just to talk about Matheson for a minute, if we can, both a blessing and a curse. And I heard this week, my apologies, I forget who made the comparison of Mike Matheson to a Patrice Brisebois. And I thought, all right, now that makes sense. Someone who's offensively gifted, and we've heard before, Mike Matheson skates beautifully. He sure does. If he gets to 60 points, what a milestone. But he's a train wreck in his own end. He's also been a train wreck on the power play. I contend that the Canadiens' dubious record of having the most shorthanded goals scored against their power play, they're at 11, that leads the league, for the most part is caused by mistakes and turnovers by Mike Matheson on the power play. But more so than that, it's just his judgment or lack of judgment, his decision-making or bad decisions, his recklessness, taking unreasonable risks. The errors that he makes are huge. They end up in the back of the net. They lead to goals. And for whatever reason, he's a bit myopic in his reads. He can't see how the play will unfold. And, we heard him after the Boston game saying, listen, I saw a forward in front of me. I thought I could beat him. And that's why I went for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then he continued on behind the net and didn't gave up the puck too easily. And maybe Cole Caulfield could have been better in backing him up. But all of these bad decisions, Marty St. Louis, to use another Marty term, risk management, has Mike Matheson gotten better in his risk management over the course of the season? I don't think so. I think he grossly overestimates his own ability and then, makes mistakes. And listen, if he was 22 years old, if he was the same age as Caden Guhle, you'd encourage those mistakes. You'd be willing to forgive them. But Mike Matheson is 30 years old. He should know what he's capable of and what he isn't. And I just find him incredibly reckless. And that's why, all of this special teams time, all of the way that they have built the defense, not around the young defenseman, not saying what's best for Caden Guhle and build the defense. They've built it around Mike Matheson, has been a huge mistake, in my opinion, and I really hope that ends for the start of next season.
And I think credit where credit's due in terms of Mike Matheson is very skilled, but like you said, I think sometimes it just doesn't pan out, and I think maybe overestimates his abilities. Sometimes it makes for great highlight reel plays. Other times he looks kind of silly. So yeah, I think I agree with you pretty much with all of that. Goaltending seems to be the thing that's most set in stone with both Montembeault and Primo, with contracts heading into next season. If it were me managing the roster, I might feel inclined to maybe build this up a little bit. That seems a little bit weak and inexperienced in my opinion, but it seems like this is the tandem that this team wants going into next season, right?
It is, and it means that it's the weakest in terms of the rebuild. One of the things that Kent Hughes has recognized, and I give him full credit for that, it's not only bringing in players, it's bringing players in at the right ages. And that's why they tried to accelerate things, trading away draft picks, which would have taken a while to progress, and bringing in a young prospect like a Kirby Dach or an Alex Newhook, who's a similar age to Cole Caulfield, similar age to Caden Cooley, Nick Suzuki, so that we've heard Hughes say we want talented players who are going to peak together at the right time, and that's the way you build a contender who can be a contender that is sustainable. And so age is really key, and that's why you got pieces of that in the forward, you got pieces of that in the defenseman. It doesn't work at all with the goaltending tandem that you have here. You have two goalies that, well, are they going to be part of a contending team? Are they going to be part of a team that competes for a Stanley Cup? We haven't seen any evidence of that. And Montembeault is going to be too old, and a Jacob Fowler, who we talk about it regularly, how well he is progressing, but Jacob Fowler isn't going to get there in time. He's going to be a couple years behind probably in his progression before the Canadiens are going to need him before he's fully ready, and you certainly don't want to rush him. So I see the goaltending tandem as being the most out of sync. Now, if you believe that this is the goaltending tandem that can compete, again, we're going to go back to the stat that everybody was quoting last year. We haven't heard it much this year. Expected goals saved above expected. And when we look at that stat, Caden Primo and Sam Montembeault are in the 30s, ranked 30th in the worse than 30th in the National Hockey League. And you might be surprised to hear this, but Caden Primo is better in that stat than Sam Montembeault. Caden Primo is 33rd in the National Hockey League. Sam Montembeault is 34th. And you say, well, Caden Primo hasn't had as many starts, but it actually helps. It's a cumulative stat, so it actually helps you the more starts you get. But Caden Primo is better in that stat. And listen, when you look at most of the stats, Montembeault has a record of 13-18, 311 goals against, 905 save percentage, 0 shutouts this season. In fact, Sam Montembeault has one career shutout in 134 games over parts of 6 seasons. Caden Primo has a 6-8 record, 283 goals against. That's better. 910 save percentage. That's better. 2 shutouts, albeit against Columbus and Anaheim, but Montembeault had that opportunity as well. So the Canadiens goaltenders are way down the list. And what do you need to be a contender? Where do your goaltenders have to rank? Well, let's look at let's look at the top 15 and not just who they are, but what teams they play for. Number 1 is Connor Hellebuck, that leads the goals saved above expected. The Jets have the number 1 and the number 14 position, Brosseau at 14, locked up. They have 2 goalies in the top 14 in that category. Florida, another team that's having an excellent season and are a Stanley Cup contender. They have 2 goaltenders. Bobrovsky is 3rd in that category. Stolarz is 8th. Boston, another team pursuing a Stanley Cup. Swayman at 6, Ullmark at 13. New York Rangers, another top team in the league. They have 2 goaltenders, Shesterkin at 7, Quick at 9. So there's 4 teams there that are taking up 8 of those top 15 spots, and that's where you need to be. You don't need to be down in the 30s. If you are, you don't have the goaltending to be able to. And remember, the stat, this is chosen because it's less reliant on the folks in front of you. It's less reliant on that. So I think the Canadiens have a real problem. It makes me think of Askarov being offered a Askarov. I'm not saying he's the answer, but I'm saying that a goaltender of his caliber at the age he is and the progression he has made in his development is the kind of goaltender that would match up with the ages of the Canadiens' other talent. I think this is an area where, yes, Montembeault, Primo, stopgap for sure. Unless there's a goaltending controversy here and Primo's going to take over next. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think this is an area where Hughes has to do something in order to, and that might be that once the Canadiens get to that stage, that they go out and they trade for a goaltender. We'll see, but I think this is an area where the rebuild hasn't necessarily caught up in terms of goaltending.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And isn't there a famous quote from an unknown GM saying, goaltending doesn't matter anymore? I remember hearing that. I think it was on 32 Thoughts coming from Elliot Friedman, but I kind of disagree with that. Point blank, I think even you need at least like average goaltending to get anywhere. I think being out of the 30s in those stats is, if anything, it kind of weakens your chance of being a playoff team going forward.
For sure.
And let's look at some of the players that could be headed out of the Montreal Canadiens organization this summer. We mentioned Pearson and Colin White both being on expiring contracts. Jesse Ullinen he's going to be an RFA, but I think there might be some anticipation from our end that he maybe doesn't get qualified. He's not been a favorite of Marty St. Louis. It seems like Jesse Ullinen struggled to find a spot in the lineup. He's just not been the right fit. And of course, do you remember Chris Weidman? I haven't seen him around in a while, but of course, I can't imagine he'll be back. And of course, the trade rumors about Jordan Harris and David Savard. There's potentially some players moving out in that category. So what are your thoughts on all this, and in particularly Jesse Ullinen?
I like Jesse Ullinen. He's got some skill. He's responsible defensively. He's an excellent skater. He's got a terrific shot. He hasn't found a place, and I don't think he's had the opportunity. And when he has been given opportunity in limited doses, he hasn't offered the coaching staff anything. Now, we didn't talk about Pezzetta, but has he offered anything? Like, I think Ullinen has much more to offer than a Pezzetta, but I think being a fan favorite, the fact that he will rack up 8 hits in 6 minutes in a game is of value to Marty St. Louis. I don't see Ullinen, being a favorite of his, and not that we don't want to see Jesse Ullinen qualified and made an offer. But I expect that they don't see him in their future plans, and given his age, that they'll give him an opportunity somewhere else. You mentioned the expiring contracts. The only other thing there, I'm just going to repeat that I expect a defenseman who has been in the lineup for the Canadiens this season to be traded this summer, whether that's Harris, whether that's David Savard. I don't know. I think there's going to be some movement there.
And one player on an expiring contract that we expect to be back is one Arber Xhekaj. Of course, fan favorite, certainly seems to have found a role within this organization. He'll be an RFA. I think that with Arber Xhekaj, you might want to be careful with that contract extension in terms of term. Personally, I would lean more towards, somewhere between 1 and 3 years. Maybe you'd want something a little bit longer, but I think that's someone that you do want to keep around. What are your thoughts on the re-signing Arber Xhekaj?
Well, according to social media, fans want him signed to 6, 7, 8 years. I don't think you do that for a third pairing defenseman. Given that they talk about him in unicorn terms, I think you're going to see a 3-year contract. That's where I would lean at the very most 4, but likely around that 3-year contract range.
Coming in and joining the organization, I think we only really expect prospects unless there's some big trade coming up. But of course, Owen Beck joining the organization and Logan Mailloux joining the organization, at least in the NHL, are going to be pretty huge for this team. There are a lot of players that I think will be battling for a spot in this lineup. Some of them may end up in Laval. Of course, Reinbacher, Lane Hudson, Jaden Struble, Justin Barron, Adam Engstrom might be on the way. Philippe Michard might be better suited for Laval, but he'll be battling. Sean Farrell, when he's had the opportunity, has looked pretty good. Emil Heineman, I think it was last training camp where he actually got a look on that top line with Suzuki. I think that's certainly an option. Of course, Jared Davidson, someone that we've liked in Laval. Riley Kidney and Jakob Dobas, probably another year in Laval there, but certainly a lot of players battling for spots to make their way into the NHL next season.
And from a development perspective, with a development-minded coach, those players that you mentioned would get prime opportunities in Laval, and also that should be a pretty potent lineup. You mentioned Emil Heineman. He was injured in training camp. He might have had an opportunity to challenge for a spot last year. I think that Owen Beck would have. He was pretty close last year in training camp. He's got to be one of those guys who takes a spot this coming fall. Logan Mailloux, we talked about how good he is, and I truly believe that there is a player, an unnamed player, who is going to be the next Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, and whoever that is, and he is going to be in the lineup. Now, what is going to have to be moved to get that player, whether it's picks, whether it's a prospect, whether it's combination, whether it's a veteran, I truly believe that there's going to be, Kent Hughes has to be doing some work over the summer to get closer to be on track for this rebuild.
Are we spreading Trevor Zegras rumors all the same?
I'm not going to get into that. One of the things that, and I know, I don't want to be pessimistic. One of the things that's bandied about is the fact that the Montreal Canadiens have been in so many one-goal games this season, which is great. It's great for them to experience that, to compete, and to be right there with teams. Now, in some situations, it's because they lock things down and weren't in a position to necessarily tie the game. But the other difficult statistic for me to kind of counter that is that the Montreal Canadiens have not beaten a playoff-bound team since January 15th. Now, that's 22 or 23 games since. That has to change next year. That has to change. They have to be better against the better teams in the league. And of course, you want to beat up on the teams that you're supposed to win games against. Yeah, I'm all in on that. But you also have to you have to beat a playoff-bound team, and that hasn't happened in a while. That needs to change. And to change that, we've outlined what needs to happen next season.
For sure. So with that, looking at that projected roster, is this a playoff caliber roster? Honestly, if I'm sharing my opinion, I think that if development goes the way it should, and there are some of those changes that we've talked about, I think it could be a step forward, but I think there's still a lot of holes to fix in this lineup, and a lot more players maybe better qualified for certain positions. I think step forward is reasonable expectation. I think they're maybe a little ways off from being in that playoff conversation. What are your thoughts here?
I don't know that it should be the goal. I don't know if it would be beneficial. Certainly it would be beneficial for the mood, for Canadiens fans, for the younger players to get a taste of the playoffs, but I don't know that it would be all that helpful. And the reason this question is coming up is because after the trade deadline, Kent Hughes said, I look forward to being a buyer at the deadline rather than being a seller. And many of them in the media and lots of fans jumped on board and said, he's talking about next year. I don't think he was. I really don't think he was. And, you know, if the Canadiens indeed are buyers next trade deadline, are they going to miss out on helping to move some of the spare parts, the extra pieces, the players who could be valuable to a playoff-bound team, and continue to build up their asset pool? You know, could there be a chance of playoffs? I don't think they have the goaltending. I think that there's still some movement in terms of defense, and there's a mess at the bottom of the forwards. So, you know, I don't know about that, and I don't know if it would be something that we really want. I know you want to get to that fans want to get to the playoffs, but I don't know if it would be helpful in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point too. Next season you might be looking at one of those top prospects in the drafts once again, and I think that could be a huge help. Based on some of the pieces here, I think that still leaves some holes. So certainly looking forward to what's going to happen in this offseason. And I think that's going to bring us to our question to all of our listeners, our Canadiens Connection question of the week. Will the Canadiens ice a playoff caliber roster in 2024-2025? And we want to hear from you. We did our best to provide some good information here and project what that roster might look like, but certainly would like to hear from all of our listeners as we're just about to head into our break here. So this will be our final break. Stay with us. We'll have this Have Your Say segment. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 287 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And it's going to be an interesting last couple of weeks here for the Montreal Canadiens as the regular season comes to an end. Lots to look forward to in the offseason. Lots to look forward to with the draft coming up as well. And it's going to be difficult. And we'll be here to make sure that we provide you all the best Montreal Canadiens coverage. So here's what you need to know from Rocket Sports. We cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news, and you can find all of that content at thn.com/Montreal. We have game day posts, feature articles. We cover Laval Rocket and Trois-Rivières Lions, so make sure you head over there and check out all of that coverage, all the Canadiens coverage in one place. And if you're looking for more multimedia type content, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs. You'll be able to pull that up. Throughout the week, we post a couple different shows. The first one being the Habs Hockey Report Show. Amy Johnson hosts that, and the latest episode is entitled Value for Assets, how the Montreal Canadiens approached the NHL trade deadline. Head over there, check that out. That's a great midweek update, as Amy does a wonderful job keeping everyone up to date. And if you're looking for content on the Laval Rocket, head over to the Rocket Hockey Report as well. That gets posted just after the Habs Hockey Report show. The latest episode entitled 2 New Players Added to the Laval Rocket's Roster. So get to know the Laval Rocket. Amy Johnson covers them. She's your best source to keep up to date with that. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you like all the content there, and leave a comment too. Get involved in that conversation. We did keep an eye on a few great conversations happening in the comments this past week, so make sure you get involved there, and we'd love to hear your opinions.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also put this podcast on our YouTube channel as well, the Canadiens Connection podcast. Last week's episode entitled Trade Deadline Grade the GM, third NHL trade deadline for Kent Hughes. So make sure, if you haven't already, check that one out. Leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment too. Lots of great comments on that one as well. We're going to read some of those a little bit later in this segment. Coming up on March the 28th, we have another live stream watch along on YouTube. So if you've joined us before, you know the drill. Head over to our YouTube channel on March the 28th as the Montreal Canadiens take on the Philadelphia Flyers. I'll be joined by my Rocket Sports colleague Nathan. If you've not done it yet, we'd appreciate if you stopped by. We have a live chat. If you go on a mobile device and watch and listen along with us there, you can get into that live chat. Let us know your thoughts. Interact with us there. You can also just mute the game. Honestly, you don't need to hear from Gary Galley. You'll get game by game play from me, as well as great topics and Montreal Canadiens discussion. So we have a lot of fun doing this, and we'd appreciate if you circle the calendar. Thursday, March the 28th, the Philadelphia Flyers versus the Montreal Canadiens.
And circle the calendar, or go to YouTube, youtube.com/allhabs, or search for @allhabs, and subscribe. Click the bell to be notified whenever we put out new content. That way you're going to not miss a video from Amy about the Habs Hockey Report, Rocket Hockey Report. You're not going to miss the live streams. Subscribing to our YouTube channel is the best way to make sure that happens.
Definitely. And make sure that you are subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, the Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm, as well as all of your favorite podcasting platforms. We'd appreciate if you enjoyed the show, if you left a five-star review for us. That would go a long way in helping us out. We're here every single Saturday throughout the entire year, so as the off-season approaches, don't worry, we'll still have plenty of Habs content and plenty of fun episodes coming up over the summer months. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And Rick, our Rocket Sports team is recruiting. We're looking for lots of wonderful people to join us. Personally, I have a lot of fun doing this, hosting the podcast every single week. So if there's something that you'd be interested in doing, reach out to us, join us. Rick, can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, we might have an announcement to make, and we'll likely do that next week about one of you, a wonderful fan, joining the Rocket sports team. We got a great team who contribute in a number of different ways. Amy, yourself, Michael, Chris, Brian, who does our fantasy sports, Nathan, you mentioned, Patrick Williams, Stephen, Dr. Steve. We all work together, have a great time working together. And if you want to join us, send us a text at 5853-ROCKET, send us an email at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, or reach out to us on social media.
So we look forward to hearing from you. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, will the Canadiens ice a playoff caliber roster in the 2024-25 season? We want to hear from you. The Rocket Sports text line, once again, is 5853-ROCKET. But if you have a little bit more to say, we also have an email. How can people reach out to us by email, Rick?
The email address is hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
We get tons of text, tweets, emails, and comments throughout the week, and here are some of our favorites, lightly edited, just for clarification. And this first one comes on Facebook from Tim Kinney. He says, hi, just dropping a note to share an observation regarding Slafkovsky that I feel so optimistic about. I see that he is performing at a high level in regards to puck battle and retrieval. I find he is using his size and reach along with a quick decision-making process to show great potential in his skill set. Moreover, I often see him a few feet away from opposing player with the puck and seemingly out of the battle potential, yet he consistently uses reach and stick and quick action to win the puck back for his team. I have witnessed many veterans over the years that I do not feel have the same confidence. I feel that at only 19 years of age, he has potential to be a puck possession expert for the Montreal Canadiens in years to come. Just thought that I would like to share this with you all, and we appreciate all of those insights. Tim also says, keep up the great work, and thank you, Tim, for pointing out these observations. Certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on, as that's something that we want to see more from Slafkovsky.
Yeah, I think that Tim asks, he'd like to know if we share the same thoughts as he does. And I think that line that where he says he has the potential to be a puck possession stalwart for the Habs for years to come. Agree 100%. Is he there yet? Do we want to see more? Do we want to see him win more puck battles? Do we want to see him protect the puck better? Do we want to see him use his size more often? I'd say yes, we do. One thing, and Tim also mentions confidence, I think that has grown by leaps and bounds. We had a player who was not very confident and was playing like he wasn't very confident at the beginning of the season. He looks much happier, much more confident in the latter half of the season.
And we have quite a few comments coming from YouTube, and I'll let you start this off.
Stephen Lamb, 810, says, and this is in regards to what grade would you give to Kent Hughes for his performance at the trade deadline, not only at the trade deadline, but leading up to the trade deadline. Stephen says he gives a grade of C at best.
Coming from Joe Luna, 5342. I believe we've read one of Joe's comments on here before. What they have to say is we should buy out Savard, Armia, Gallagher, Dvorak, and then get a coach, and let's go. 3 more years of suffering coming from the crap players and contracts. So, Joe, looking forward to some potential buyouts this offseason, and not feeling overly optimistic here.
Certainly not about Marty St. Louis. The next one is from SC Christ. I'll venture his name's Christian. I'd say a B grade is fair. Salary retention sucks, but having 3 goalies is not a good thing either. Third rounder is a good deal, and I consider that the meaty part of the draft where some interesting players are found. Good point, and I think B is fair as well.
Coming from JJ Evans 1693. Maybe there's some relation to Jake Evans. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe. But what they have to say is would have gotten more if he traded Allen before the season started. So, of course, the return for Jake Allen was a 3rd-round pick, and I guess JJ's not feeling super happy about that.
At Habination says his or her grade is a C+. Moving Jake Allen gives more games for Primo to prove he's the number 1 goaltender. We do have a goalie controversy. He thought that that's what they would get in trading Allen. Should have held out for less to help progress the youth, in my opinion, by trading Allen a lot earlier in the season. All right. Thank you to Habinations.
Coming from Tony Alloy 327 saying, besides getting Monahan, trying to think of a trade that we straight up won under Hugo isn't easy. So yeah, D- if they're lucky. So not feeling super happy about some of the trades that Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon have made since taking over in that Habs front office.
This one coming from @she_26. And we really appreciate the comments from @she_26, both on the YouTube channel, and she joins the live streams as well. She's complimentary to all of our content. She has her own views, and we certainly welcome that. So she starts off the comment by saying, so unpopular opinion here, but I don't think Monahan should have been traded. I also think that Ken Hughes should have grabbed Toffoli. He never should have been traded to begin with. We could use a couple of good scoring vets. Perreault-Mishak trade made absolutely sense in my honest opinion and at all. And as far as Jake Allen trade goes, geez, Ken Hughes should have traded Jake Allen at the beginning of the season when Jake was rocking it in goal. Remember, he had a great October. He was really playing well. Hughes was asked enough times about the 3 goalie situation, and he said he didn't see an issue. All 3 goalies' stats suffered because of that. She_26 gives Kent Hughes a D- at best. She adds, I'm on March break now, so I'm in a good mood. Otherwise, I'd probably give him an F. So love that. And happy March break. I'm glad that you're enjoying it and that you're in a good mood. And then She26 adds this PS. And I should fill in here that last week I read a comment from She_26, and I said that something about we got a nice comment from this female, and then I kind of corrected myself and said, I guess I shouldn't assume that just from the name. Well, she says, P.S. When you were reading some comments last week, I'm a girl. Ha, 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 ha. So thanks for clarifying that. Thanks for your comments, and thanks for all of your support. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is kind of nice to read through, and we appreciate that you're all listening to what we have to say, and we appreciate listening to all the opinions that you have to share with us. So keep those comments, text, tweets, and emails coming in. We appreciate hearing from each and one of you, and certainly open to all sorts of different opinions. So coming up, CH Weekly, the Montreal Canadiens have 3 games tonight on March the 16th. They're going to take on the Calgary Flames. And, of course, tomorrow on March the 17th, happy St. Patrick's Day. Almost forgot, but for those who are celebrating, happy St. Patrick's Day to you. On the 19th of March, Montreal heads out west to take on the Edmonton Oilers, and then on the 21st, they take on the Vancouver Canucks. So lots of great hockey to get to, and we'll make sure that we keep you covered. That's going to be a wrap for us today. Thanks to all for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week, and we'll be back here next Saturday, March the 23rd, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Rocket Sports.